When we grow up, many of us plan vacations to visit the statues of Easter Island, to explore the Mayan ruins in Central America, and to walk through the temples of Angkor Wat. We feel drawn to their often spectacular and haunting beauty, and also to the mysteries that they pose. The scale of these ruins testified to the former wealth and power of their builders, yet the builders vanished, abandoning the greater structures that they had created. We ask ourselves, how could a society that was once so mighty end up collapsing? We wonder, what were the fates of the individual citizens who once resided here? Of course, lurking behind this mystery and these questions is the nagging thought, might such a fate eventually befall our own society? Will tourists one day, long into the future, stare mystified at the rusting hulk of New York skyscrapers and ask themselves, how could a society that was once so mighty end up collapsing? Over the course of this year, we're going to study how it is that societies decline and collapse. In this video, we're going to focus on unpacking the word collapse. In this way, when you hear me say collapse, we all know exactly what I mean. The first thing to remember, and as was already covered in class, there are two types of collapse: annihilation and reversion slash simplification. Having already defined these two types of collapse in this video, I'm going to share examples of each. In this way, you'll leave this video with a greater understanding of those definitions. Let's start with annihilation, which, as we know, is a drastic decrease in human population size over a considerable area for an extended time. And let's use the Cahokia civilization as our example. Cahokia was the largest and most influential urban settlement of the Mississippian culture, which developed advanced societies across much of what is now the central and southeastern United States, beginning more than 1,000 years before European contact. At the high point of its development, Cahokia was the largest urban center north of the great Mesoamerican cities in Mexico and Central America. Although it was home to only about 1,000 people before 1050 CE, its population grew rapidly after that date. According to a 2007 study, between 1050 and 1100 CE, Cahokia's population increased from between 1,400 and 2,800 people to between 10,000 and 15,000 people. At its peak, archaeologists estimate the city's population was around 40,000 people, with more people still living in outlying farms and villages that supplied the main urban center. This means Cahokia was larger than any subsequent city in the United States until the 1780s, when Philadelphia's population grew beyond 40,000. In the 13th century, the population began to decrease, and by 1300, there was no longer any traces of life left in the city. While this collapse still remains something of a mystery, there are a couple of theories. First, given that it was such a large urban center, one of the major problems that Cahokia faced was keeping a steady supply of food. A related problem was waste disposal. As a result, Cahokia became an unhealthy place to live thanks to polluted waterways. Because it was such an unhealthy place to live, it is believed that the city had to rely on social and political attractions to bring in a steady supply of new immigrants. Otherwise, the town's death rate would have caused it to be abandoned even earlier. Second, in 2015, researchers found evidence of major floods at Cahokia, potentially so bad that it flooded all the urban settlements. Now, regardless of what caused its collapse, we know that the Cahokia Empire, or civilization I should say, fell to the first and most serious form of collapse, which was annihilation. Let's move on now to reversion slash simplification, which, as we know, means a society that collapses by a rapid change in societal complexity, destabilizing its institution and causing massive shifts in population. In cases of collapse, civilizations tend to revert to less complex forms of government, including the reversion to using simpler technologies, which are characteristics of a dark age. To explain reversion slash simplification, let's take a look at the Akkadian Empire, and I should say probably the collapse of the Akkadian Empire. Situated on the Arabian Peninsula, the Akkadian Empire reached its political peak around the 24th century BCE, meaning around 2300 BCE. In fact, some scholars maintain that the Akkadian Empire was the first empire in history. Roughly 180 years after its founding, the Akkadian Empire collapsed. ushering in a dark age with no prominent authority and seeming chaos, replacing what had been a highly structured and systematized empire. For example, in the wake of the Akkadian Empire's collapse, all farm animals were released and left to roam around freely. Different from the collapse of Cahokia, though, the Akkadian people weren't annihilated. They weren't wiped out without a trace. Instead, the empire simply reverted back to being socially, politically, and economically less complex. Many scholars believe this was caused by drought. Excavation at Akkadian sites suggests that skeleton-thin sheep and cattle died of drought, and tens of thousands of people abandoned these various sites, seeking wetter areas elsewhere. Villages shrank in size by an average of 75%. Trade collapsed, as agricultural regions could no longer support larger populations, meaning people abandoned farther reaches of the empire in order to relocate to sites near freshwater sources. In this way, the empire grew significantly smaller, and the world's first empire collapsed. I hope you guys have learned a little bit more now about annihilation and reversion/simplification. I know my dog Josie certainly has. Thanks, guys.